we are one of the issues that exists in Pennsylvania, and it is an issue that unfortunately Pennsylvania ranks pretty poorly with respect to the issue of legal support for low-income individuals, getting a public defender when you go into the courtroom. And unfortunately, Pennsylvania just does not step up to the plate with respect to finding and providing support for that. But we're working to change that in Harrisburg. That's something that's been an issue of ours for a while. Joining us to help provide some clarity to the conversation is the head of the Philadelphia Defenders, Keisha Hudson. Keisha Hudson, welcome to Philly Speaks. How are you, Keisha?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. Keisha, talk to us. Talk to us about why this is important. Why do we need to have legal support, and why is it that Pennsylvania just hasn't provided that legal support for low-income individuals?
It's so critical. Public defenders are the only attorneys that are guaranteed by the Constitution, by the Sixth Amendment right to counsel. And in 1963, in Gideon versus Wainwright, the Supreme Court finally realized that those who come in contact with the criminal justice system who are poor should be appointed counsel. The Defender Association has been around since 1934, so we have been in the game much longer than Gideon. But it is such a crucial right. I think what people do not realize is just how many people come in contact with the criminal justice system. And we are the most over-policed, over-incarcerated country in the Western world.
Yes.
And the public defender is crucial if we are to ensure that people who come in contact with the criminal justice system, their families, are best and most effectively and better represented.
So you are the head of the Philadelphia Defenders, and as you know, Keisha, one of our superheroes, Keir Bradford Gray, used to have that position and that responsibility. She's a very regular person here on Philly Speaks. Pennsylvania is one of two states. I think the other state is Montana.
We're the only one. No, we're the only one.
Breaking news. What happened?
We're the last one. We're the only state in the country that does not, where the state legislature does not provide a single penny, not 1 cent, to public defender agencies. We're a 67 county Commonwealth. There are 67 different public defense systems, although in the majority of the counties, an actual public defense agency does not exist. But we are the only state now that does not provide any funding to the public defense agencies.
Well, you just unfortunately woke me up a little bit more with respect to that particular point. I thought it was us and Montana, but now it's clear it's just Pennsylvania. And so we're trying to move legislation. I know Governor Shapiro in his budget proposal proposed that there be about a $10 million appropriation for public defense in Pennsylvania. If we're successful, we will now be not the last state to get into that space and provide state support for public defense. Joining us, Keisha, we want to bring in Representative Napoleon Nelson into this conversation. He's state representative in Montgomery County. He is also the vice chair of the Pennsylvania's Legislative Black Caucus. Representative Napoleon Nelson, how you doing this morning, sir? I know he's somewhere. Representative Nelson is somewhere. Yeah, I know he's got to be somewhere.
He's everywhere.
Somewhere. Find him. Find the state rep. In the meantime, while we're tracking him down, Keisha, tell us what could additional state support, if we're successful with getting this $10 million appropriation, what would that mean? I mean, you don't get it all, Keisha. All right. You don't get it all here in Philly.
To put it in perspective,
yes.
Our neighbor, Ohio, the governor in 2021 invested $200 million in their public defense system. So, $10 million is a start. We are. I think it will be obviously it's a step in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
But when we compare ourselves to other states, right now we are the only one who doesn't fund it. But if this happens and we get the $10 million, it is certainly a floor. And I believe the governor has remarked on that in recent remarks. He understands it's a floor, not the ceiling, and we have a lot more work to do.
There you go. We're talking to Keisha Hudson. She's the head of the Philadelphia Defenders, the chief defender. I think that's the right title. Is that the right title, Keisha?
That's right.
The chief defender in Philadelphia, the Philadelphia Defenders Association. In a practical matter, what do those dollars mean? What do those dollars mean to your work? Getting extra state support to your work. What does that mean?
So one of the things that I think would be remarkable in terms of how the $10 million could be spent is training. Right now, the majority of public defense officers throughout the Commonwealth, there's no training.
Mm-hmm.
I did capital work for 10 years. I represented people who were sentenced to death and are in Pennsylvania's death row. And the majority of the people who are on death row were represented by public defenders. And public defenders who had no resources to represent clients who were accused of and ultimately convicted of capital murder. One of my cases, my client, was represented by someone who was a mere 1 year out of law school, right? 1 year out of law school, no training, no resources, no investigator, no social worker, no mitigation specialist was handed a capital case. And of course, my client is, ended up on death row. I would love to see the funding dedicated to providing robust training right before your loved one, gets appointed a public defender. We want to ensure that public defender is ready to represent your loved one in what may be a life or death moment for them. And so training is just, I think, a critical need. We bring people into the work, but we have to give them the training and the resources so they can handle these serious matters.
Keisha, joining us right now, we found them. Representative Napoleon Nelson is going to jump into this conversation. He's the vice chair of the Pennsylvania Legislative Black Caucus, and he represents communities in Montgomery County. Welcome to Philly Speaks, Representative Nelson. How are you this morning?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you both?
Doing great, sir. Doing great. Tell us where the fight is legislative. We know the governor has made a budget proposal of $10 million in this space. Tell us where the fight is legislatively on this.
We're actually taking this fight to all four caucuses, House and Senate, Democratic and Republican caucus, just making sure everybody's on board.
Mm-hmm.
It's a no-brainer. Nobody wants to be the only one. The fact that Pennsylvania is the only state is embarrassing to us all. But we just got to make sure that we're doing all the right things, pushing every button. Senator, you know how hard it is to get legislation passed in Pennsylvania. So we're just making sure until it's done that we take this fight to every corner of that Capitol building and make sure that we get it over the finish line.
How did you feel, Representative Nelson, when the governor made his proposal for this appropriation back in March? What did that? I know because this has been an issue of yours for several years now. When he made that budget proposal, how did you feel about that?
Listen, it felt great, but there came with it an awful lot of expectations because, truth be told, Governor Wolf had also mentioned in his budget proposals, or at least his speeches, that we would similarly fund the indigent defense system, and we just didn't quite get it done. So it's great to know that we've got a partner in the governor to get this done. It's great to know that there are strong bipartisan leaders in all four caucuses who are working to get this done. But we still got to get legislation to the governor's desk, and that's never going to be easy.
It's never easy in Harrisburg, but I'm going to submit that the wind is at our back. We've got some positive things happening, moving legislation in the Senate. I know this stuff is getting positioned in the House of Representatives. One of the first lines of criminal justice reform is making sure that everybody has the appropriate and well-resourced defense when they go into that courtroom, and not having our public defenders have to essentially, in many respects, fend for themselves with respect to legal support, and having trained individuals, as Keisha said, that the chief defender for the Philadelphia Defenders, having trained individuals on capital defense matters. That's death penalty, family. That's death penalty. All right. In there, fully represented, fully resourced, fully staffed, updated computer systems, good information to manage, cases and traffic and all of that is ultimately, I think, the first round of real criminal justice reform. And it is by Constitution mandated that there be a defense, a well-resourced defense. Keisha Hudson, how do folks find you on social media?
I am on Twitter. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram, K Hudson Philly Defender. I would encourage people to check out our website, phillydefenders.org. We have a lot of resources and information. And I just want to personally thank you, Senator, and Representative Nelson, who is my representative, for your advocacy and fight. You have both been in the fight for a long time to get incident defense funding. We need you. We're grateful, and thank you.
Thank you, the Chief